Well, I know he started out, you had him starting out as
An engineer.
engineer on the railroad, I understand. And
Rail-
then
no.
within a couple of things, he became a radio announcer like that.
Right, and I was not aware of that, and I was not involved in any of that because
Okay.
I'd worked on Greenland till 1947.
Right.
And for a year I tried advertising, but again, as I had mentioned early on, I was a little too young. So I got back into comics, but then I didn't go back to Greenland. And I looked up a chap I knew vaguely, a fellow named Stan Lee, and he worked for his uncle Martin Goodman, who named the company Timely. Now, they used to say about Martin Goodman, he could never make a living. And early on, he actually did sell shoelaces on street corners. Whether that meant it was part of the Depression, he did not sell apples on the corner, but he did have bad times. So when he was in comics and he worked with Stan, I think Stan was doing an admirable job. Some people say there was a lot of stuff that he had conned from other people. I never knew about that, but working on staff, it was fun for the 2 years I worked with him. And I worked for till 1950, but he had his staff in the Empire State Building in New York, and it was a huge room, and it was like almost like a bullpen. But shall I go into more
Go
of this?
ahead.
And the people we had there were Sid Shores, who did most of the Captain America. This was well after Kirby. Although Kirby would, I guess, come in from time to time. I knew very little about that, and I didn't know Joe Simon at all, so I didn't know what they were doing. But there was Johnny Buscema, who did a lot of the variety of things. His art was always very, very good. He was a penciler. I was a penciler. I did most of Human Torch,
You did Human
Submariner,
Torch? Oh, I'll be done.
and a lot of the westerns. And from time to time, I'd fill in for Sid when he was busy doing Captain Americas.
This is like in the late 40s or so?
Between 48 and 50
Okay.
that I was there.
Okay.
And Gene Colan was on staff, and he did a lot of the same things, but I think there were some other characters that they had at the time that Gene was doing. And Dan DeCarlo was doing
The Archie guy now.
the girly things,
Right.
a lot of the
My Girl Pearl and all that.
all that
Yeah.
business at that time.
Right.
And he was good. There was a fellow named Al Pross, and I don't know what happened to him. And he did a lot of the Western things, but very, very good. But pencils. And then he also did girly stuff too, helping Dan DeCarlo.
Right.
Now, what I'm getting at is, this is kind of like a crossover. I was doing a number of things, the other guys were doing a number of things, and I don't know if any of them, except for maybe Gene Colan, would know what work he did at that time. Gene was more of a stylist, and his work could be recognized. But we had inkers, we had about 4 inkers, and say if a job had to be hurried, maybe 2 or 3 inkers would get a 10-page story, penciled by maybe 1 man. And it would kind of look the same, but hurried and be ready the next day. You'd never know who did exactly what. So people have asked me a number of times, what was your work in Timely? Could never point to it and know which it was.
Mm-hmm.
There was another reason why it comes to mind. There were times when somebody from Stan's office would come in and say, we've got a rush job. There was a 10-page story, script, all typed out. 2 pages to you, 2 pages to you, 2 pages to you, 2 pages to you. So there were actually all 5 of the pencilers who were working on 2 pages. At the end of the day, that was done. The following day, it was distributed to different inkers. I didn't know what I did, and the inkers didn't know for sure which they did.
I think Jerry Bales is the only one that's been able to identify some of the work.
Some of it.
Yeah.
That's
I
it.
talked to him
Not
the
all of
other
it.
day,
Some
to
of
be
it.
true.
It's kind of like a shop situation back then, right?
I have a question.
Go.
What were some of the pen names
Only one.
Oh, pen names that I used?
Yes.
Only one.
I used just one. And that goes back to my original story. I used Mark Dillon.
Might do.
I was being trained for advertising. I was interested in advertising. I wanted to get into it. That was where the big money was, like $100 a week
Right.
in those days. However, I found that I couldn't get advertising work, as I mentioned earlier on. And so I went toward comics, but I thought I'll just stay a short while, maybe 2 weeks, 1 month, 2 months,
Right.
a short period of time. And in that way, because comics were at the lowest rung of the ladder of culture or writing or reading material, that I'd better not be acquainted with comics if I was going to go into advertising. So I'd heard from advertising people, whom I got to know, there was some sort of dislike for people in comics in the first place.
Comics were the lowest rung of the ladder.
So this is one reason, one good
Today they
reason,
beg for them.
why
Right.
I don't own any of my own work. I don't own any of the comics. That I don't own a $33,000 All-American 16. I don't know, not even one. And
You have
Carrie-
2 fans have sent me.
Oh, yeah.
Tattered copies.
No, I mean of the number
Oh,
ones.
no. I
Right.
took
Green
number
Lanterns.
2
Of
and
Green
number
Lantern.
11. Yeah. Fans have sent it to me.
And those are the quarterlies.
Just for the heck of
No,
it.
it's not the Portland.
Go ahead. I was just about to ask one thing, since I've never heard anything about. Okay, were you around for the creation of, say, Doiby Dickles, GL's old sidekick or so like that?
Right.
With his cab Gertrude and his little Green Lantern suit and all that.
Right. And we worked on, well, I worked on it with Bill Finger. And for the most part, the ideas came from Mayer and some from Finger. By the way, I wanted to mention something about Bill Finger.
Go.
People had mentioned a lot of negative things about Finger, asking me if this is true or that's true about Bill Finger. One, that he was a great womanizer. I don't know. He wouldn't tell me anyway. Number 2, that he was always late with his work, and his deadlines were never on time. That he drank a lot. He was a carouser, not the nicest guy.
Sweetest
I
guy.
knew nothing like that about him at all. And I knew a lot of people in the business, that even at that time. Alfred Bester
Right.
did some of my work later on,
Right.
before his TV and
Science fiction.
radio, science fiction, and
Right.
motion picture work that he's done. So he did some of that too. But
Solomon Grundy.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
He created Solomon Grundy, right?
I think so.
Right.
But going back, I had created not an oath, but an incantation. And I felt that that would be the way we'd go from the incantation to the lantern as to how Alan Scott, dressed as the hero, would then go on to do all the good things he does. So it seemed to me that if he could do that sort of thing, an incantation was always necessary.